to experience is a story of a structure which started in 1976 as a garden hotel and later became one of the most talked about and prestigious hotels in the entire world. I'm standing on Nairobi Serena and this is the Ideal Space TV show. Karibu. Of the show with an iconic piece of architecture that has become a part of Kenya's heritage and folklore. The year 1976, just more than 37 years ago, the city of Nairobi was emerging as one of the fastest growing locations in the entire African continent. People who started settling here knew for a fact that Nairobi would become the hub and a gateway for traders, tourists of all walks of life. As the activities became more, the need to have spots for its residential and tourists to meet and exchange ideas became desirable. Hotels that met the basics such as food and accommodation mushroomed to cater for the growing numbers. One of the spots that emerged as an ideal space then was the Serena Garden Hotel, which by far had the standards any leading hotel in the world attained at its time.
I think it was driven by the need for the facility of a facility that was resonating with the African, the Kenyan theme of it. Because if you remember back then, the hotels that were there were the Hilton, the Intercont, and we didn't have a local brand, an African brand that Serena has become. And the aim was obviously, to serve the tourism market and to create opportunities for the local population, which is in conformity with the principle of the Serena hotels.
It was known as the Serena Garden Hotel back in the days, for it was surrounded by a large picnic spot which later became a recreational park in the 80s.
Over the years, the city has grown and the demands have changed. We have seen a growing market in corporate market, people coming for business. Nairobi has become the business capital for the East African region, and we've had to change to meet the needs of the new business.
In 1989, the Serena Garden Hotel went into a metamorphosis that transformed it from a regular stop for heads on beds to something more than that.
The hotel was remodeled in the late 80s, and it positioned itself as a premier 5-star hotel then, and serving the tourists as well as business people. Unfortunately, the scale has not changed of the room because of the structural limitations. And what we did is to remodel that room within the space. But also what we did is that we knocked a few rooms and reduced the key number of keys. Originally the hotel was a 200 key hotel or room hotel, and currently we have 183 rooms. You may ask me, where did the rooms go? What we did is we knocked down some 2 rooms and made 1 to enlarge them and meet the demands of the modern guest, business traveler. And out of that we lost in terms of the number of rooms available. But we added an inventory of newer, more spacious rooms.
The name changed to Nairobi Serena, the ideal space that is now a name recognized world over in the hospitality circles. As the space enjoyed its immeasurable serenity and beauty, we also learned that the Nairobi Serena got its fair share of lows. In 1998, Kenya had one of its worst terrorist attacks in the capital, Nairobi. More than 200 families were affected, including the dignitaries that were caught up in that melee. The hotel, for the few hours of that tragedy, became an emergency stop for most of the dignitaries that were affected. 10 years later, the country was once again caught up in a political crisis that had eminent persons from the African continent and overseas mediate a volatile situation that encapsulated a defining moment for the Republic of Kenya. The talks were held at the Nairobi Serena.
We saw a lot of meetings happening here. Political leaders who for some reason are having meetings to strategize on how to bring in change. Some of them who are president today and former ex-president. And I think that the most significant is the event of the post-election violence that shattered the peace in this country. And it is actually in this room that the mediation talks happened, and in this same room that the peace accord was signed on the 28th of February 2008. So that was very significant because all the eyes of the world were on Serena, and I think despite the unfortunate circumstances, we played our role by hosting those leaders here and doing whatever we could to make sure, and we prayed, and thank God peace was found.
On the high, this grand property has accommodated celebrities from world over and prides itself in hosting the highest number of presidents in the region. Apart from the piece of history that we have shared, this property that sits on a 4-acre-rich piece of land speaks of a postmodern architecture and design.
We've also been very fortunate as a hotel to host very prominent personalities who play an international role, like presidents, film stars, and the sports personalities. Really, the list is who and who in the international arena, and that has been a great endorsement of the brand.
The interior decor reflects an entirely Pan-African theme featuring art and inspiration from Ethiopia, the Maghreb, West Africa and East Africa.
What makes Serena the ideal space? Wow, Serena offers just more than accommodation and food. We offer unparalleled personal service, and also the environment is adorned with interesting things, whether it's paintings from famous local artists, fabrics, carvings, and basically even the design and the decor, which echoes the character of the people. And it's an ideal space because you can spend time in between sleeping and eating, just admiring and seeing and understanding where people have come from.
As a grand property, this space not only plays the hotel role. One thing that unmistakably stands out is the fact that every floor inside the Nairobi Serena is themed with more than 20 pieces of textiles and artifacts that speak of the rich heritage that the continent has to offer, making it a gallery and a museum at the same time.
The chandelier you see up here is locally fabricated by local artists, and it's an original piece. So besides providing lighting, it's also a beauty to look at.
Of course, the question of location comes to mind. One thing that we learned from the Nairobi Serena is its unparalleled proximity to Nairobi Business District, making it the ideal space for both visiting executives and for regional corporate event planners, global connectivity, business support, conference planning, proficiency, product launch, expertise and high-profile international corporate event venue. More like the business and leisure travelers stop.
Our founding chairman, His Highness the Aga Khan came up with the name Serena, and as it suggests, is peacefulness. It's also Serena is the name of a lady, and interesting enough, one of the the sports personalities, the tennis star, has stayed here as well. So I guess the name came from serene, peaceful, and beautiful.
Our story doesn't end here. Next week we bring you details into what has made both the soft and the hard furnishings of the Nairobi Serena be what it is. Plus, speak with the interior designer that brought it to life. From the Nairobi Serena, we now shift our lenses to do-it-yourself visual textures ideal for any room. The idea of having a home makeover is a lingering thought to a majority. Whether it's furniture, furnishings, or just paint, we learn that ideas and how to execute them can be somewhat a daunting task, especially when it comes to connecting the fantasy and the reality. This week we explored one area within the makeover idea in an already existing space without spending much. Shrinal Patel from Crown Paints shares with us on how cutout stencils can adorn any part of your space on flat paints.
The texture we're going to be looking at today it's still a stencil effect, but it's a flat paint stencil effect with texture. So what you see here on this staircase wall today is you've got a pattern which is formed with stripes. Though the background of this is a texture, it's a textured rough sort of finish, but it's not a three-dimensional texture, it's more like a two-dimensional texture. And then using a stencil effect, we've created a pattern of a repeat stripe where the stripes are of evenness, and it's just the colors that change as the stripes move from variation to variation.
To start with, stencils are now becoming a huge element to consider for both the interior and exterior, making them a strong decorating trend that is getting more and more popular with the DIY people. The stenciling technique is easy and does not require an artistic ability. In fact, pretty much anyone can stencil. To create a stencil print on your wall is very simple. First, pick an image that you want to put on your wall. The image that works best are very simple without a lot of detail or shade. Next, print out your design, then using a sponge brush, press your paint onto the open areas of the stencil. Leave everything alone to dry for a while, and when the paint is dry, check and see if you'll need to add another coat, then wait until all coats are dry before moving on.
Is textured, but it's a two-dimensional texture. The previous episode showed us a three-dimensional texture of rough and tough, where the decorator had used a different sort of a material to first apply on the wall, and then he had come up with a pattern. On top of that, he had put a top coat and a base coat, and then he had done the stencil work. In this case here, it's a flat paint which has been done with probably a ragging roller, and then what's happened is he's just used the base coat, which was the lighter color, has been applied all over the wall, and then they have divided it as a stencil and put a darker shade on some of the patches to give you the stripe effect.
Is this an effect that I can do it myself?
It is an effect you can do yourself if you want to achieve it without the roller texture. If you are comfortable with the ragging roller texture, you can use a roller, apply it all over the wall. You just have to be clever with your division, and your line work, that the lines that you do divide are straight and they're not crooked, so that you get this even pattern where it from a distance looks like a wallpaper, but from up close you know that it's a paintwork stencil.
You can actually go creative with the stencils like you had mentioned earlier on.
You definitely can. As you see on this wall here, this is the actual actual stencil pattern, which has then been mirrored as a reflection. And so it's that. And then if this wall was any bigger, the next part of the stencil would then have this part back up. So it would look like a repeat pattern, which just keeps mirroring itself.
A very interesting decorative paint technique titled Caravaggio. This week, Frank from Classic Moldings takes us through another one titled Zefiro. Frank, what's up?
Hey, what's up, team? Welcome to our studio, Classic Moldings. And today, trend, I want us to do Zefiro. Can do this gold base, this is okay. And Zefiro is a brush applied material, and what we're going to be doing is simply showing you the technique now to do it. You can get it in a gold base, you can get it in a silver base, and the color range also is unlimited. So welcome to today's trend. Sanding. Make sure our wall is smooth. First of all, you begin by doing the first coat of primer, which is an undercoat. Then once you've done the undercoat now, you sand it. Then you can start doing our Zefiro, you do one coat only. So that's why you have to make sure your surface is completely well prepared. If it's a mistake, there's no second coat to cover your mistake. So you have to make sure when you're preparing your wall, it's completely smooth. What I'm doing now, team, is wiping the dust away to make sure my wall is completely clean, ready for Zefiro application. So there it is. Always make sure all your tools, all your materials, they are all close to you. So here I have my Zefiro gold. So this is Zefiro. So we can begin the application. As I said, it's a one coat material, so I have to be very precise. I don't repeat many times to make sure the lines go diagonal, because the application technique here now is diagonal. So I have to keep making sure that my lines are diagonal, not to be really razor sharp diagonal, because it's a piece of art, you need a bit of naturalness in it, that it's not completely straight, but again, not so crooked. See what I'm doing is I'm applying, then I'm running over it to remove the brush stops. It's flowing. There's continuity. One coat. Good to go. See, this is applied to create this mold. All this is zero. You see, this is not diagonal. This is just going straight along. One of the advantages with the Zephyro is that when you have like these moldings, because it's brush applied, I'm able to get it into the grooves very easily without having to struggle much with it.
Visit our showroom on Calico Plaza, Mombasa Road. Talk to us and let us teach you how to transform your space with our amazing decorative paint finishes, cornices for your interior and exterior.
The ideal space in partnership with Classic Moldings, the home of creative interiors.
This week's design experience comes to an end. We pick it up again next week with Lost African Art. My name has been Tim Njiru. The question begs, how ideal is your space? Bye for now.